The night I overheard my son-in-law whisper those words, the world stopped. Once she's gone, we're rich. It wasn't anger that struck me first. It was disbelief, cold and sharp like a blade slipping between the ribs. My daughter's laughter followed his whisper, quiet but guilty. I stood in the hallway, holding the tea tray that suddenly felt heavier than my bones. If you love justice stories, like and subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from. Because tonight, I will tell you how an old woman named Eleanor Briggs turned betrayal into victory. I was 74 that summer. My hands trembled when I tried to button my cardigan, but my mind was still clear as daylight. My husband, Charles, had been gone for 6 years, leaving behind a lifetime of love and a comfortable inheritance that we worked for together. A small mansion on the hill, a vineyard, a few investment properties, enough for a peaceful retirement, enough for anyone to covet. My daughter Lily was my pride, the kind of child who could charm a storm into silence. But charm, I learned, can hide the darkest truths. When she married Gregory, a smooth-talking real estate agent, I told myself he was just ambitious. Handsome, polite, attentive. He always called me Mom. He would bring me flowers and ask about my health. But there was something in his eyes, something too polished to trust. It started subtly. They began visiting more often. Lily brought me homemade soup, pretending it was love, but I could feel the weight of calculation behind her smile. Gregory would casually bring up topics like wills, inheritance taxes, long-term planning. He said it was for my peace of mind. I smiled and listened, but I didn't sign a thing. One evening, he suggested, maybe you should put Lily's name on the deed, just in case something happens. Something in the way he said happens made the air go still. I laughed it off, changed the subject, and later that night locked my bedroom door. Still, I wanted to believe my daughter was innocent. I told myself she didn't know, that she was just caught up in his charm. Until that night, the whisper behind my kitchen wall. His voice low, certain. Once she's gone, we're rich. Her reply came like a wound. Gregory, not so loud. That was the moment the tea tray slipped from my hands. The china shattered on the floor, echoing through the hallway. I froze, my breath caught, my pulse hammering in my throat. I could have walked in right then, confronted them, screamed. But instead, I turned silently toward the study. I needed proof. I needed to be smarter. Because I realized something with terrifying clarity. They had already started the countdown. The next morning, Lily smiled as she made breakfast, her tone sugar-sweet. Gregory patted my shoulder and said, "You should rest more, Mom. You've been looking pale lately." His hand lingered too long. His smile didn't reach his eyes. That was when I decided, if they wanted a dead woman, I'd show them what a living one could do. But first, I had to play the role. The fragile old woman. The one who couldn't possibly outsmart them. And so the game began. But even games have consequences when the opponent has nothing left to lose. That night, as I sat alone in the dark, I heard footsteps outside my bedroom door, and a whisper that wasn't meant for my ears. The morning after that whisper, I could no longer pretend the warmth in my daughter's smile was real. It was like waking from a dream and realizing the sun you felt on your face was only the glow of a burning house. Still, I played my part. I smiled. I thanked her for breakfast. I even let Gregory drive me to the pharmacy, pretending to be tired, frail, dependent, the perfect prey. But inside, I was watching everything. The way he tightened his grip on the steering wheel whenever I mentioned my estate. The way his eyes flickered toward the house when I said, "I've been meaning to call my lawyer." He smiled then, slow and deliberate. "Mom, you should not worry about that. You have us. Family takes care of family." The word family sounded like a threat. When we returned home, I went to water the roses Charles and I had planted years ago. My sanctuary. My little corner of peace. That was when I noticed something odd, the shed door slightly ajar, the padlock broken. Inside, my husband's safe, the one where I kept property deeds and some jewelry, had been moved. Not opened, just moved, as though someone had been trying to find out what it held. That was my confirmation. They weren't just whispering. They were preparing. I felt my heart tighten. "You will not take what Charles built," I murmured. "Not while I'm breathing." That evening, Lily invited me to dinner. She said Gregory wanted to talk about the future. I almost laughed. The future, theirs, not mine. At the table, the candles flickered between us. Gregory poured me wine, and Lily reached across, holding my hand. "Mother, you've done so much for us," she began, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "We only want to make sure you're safe. You forget things sometimes, you know?" I looked at her. "Forget things?" Gregory leaned forward. "She means like when you left the stove on last week." I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. but their eyes gleamed with quiet calculation. They were building a story, the helpless, confused old woman. He continued, "Lily and I were talking, and maybe it's time we took over managing your affairs. It's just for your protection." The way he said protection made my blood run cold. I smiled faintly. "That's very thoughtful, dear. I will think about it." But inside, a storm was rising. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, listening to its creaks and sighs, the same sounds that once comforted me. Now they whispered of betrayal. In Charles's old study, I found the will in its usual place, the original copy. My heart ached as I read it. Everything went to Lily. We had made it years ago when love still meant trust. My husband's signature, faded but firm, seemed to look back at me with warning. "Forgive me, Charles," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "Our daughter lost her way. But I will not." The next morning Lily arrived again, all smiles and soft tones. "Mother, I made your favorite blueberry muffins." I accepted them, smiling back, though my stomach turned. Then, as she left the room, I noticed the faintest shimmer of white powder on her fingers, not flour. Something finer, almost metallic. When she turned away, I switched plates. Later that night, when Gregory took a bite of my muffin, his face twisted, and he rushed to the sink, spitting it out. "Lily, what did you put in these?" Her eyes widened. "Nothing, I swear." I watched from the doorway, my voice calm. "It seems your taste buds are more sensitive than mine." They stared at me, startled by my tone. That was the moment I saw it, the first flicker of fear in Gregory's eyes. A small victory, but a start. That same week, I began visiting my lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, under the guise of updating my donations. I told him everything, the whispers, the shed, the dinner. He frowned. "Eleanor, we can change everything quietly. They will not see it coming." We drafted a new will, one that would change every outcome. 2 nights later, I caught a glimpse of Lily in my study. She was holding a letter addressed to my lawyer, the very one I thought I had hidden. And when she turned, her eyes were not my daughter's anymore. Her eyes froze when she saw me standing there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The envelope in her hand trembled, just slightly, before she forced a smile. "Oh, Mother," she said lightly. "I was just tidying up. This fell out of your drawer." My throat went dry. "My drawer is in my study. You were in my bedroom." She hesitated, then placed the letter back on the desk as if it burned her fingers. "You're being paranoid. Maybe you really do need rest." That word again, rest. Always laced with hidden meaning. I walked closer, close enough to smell her perfume, the same scent she used to wear as a girl when she'd sneak into my room to borrow my scarves. But now it smelled like deceit. "Go home, Lily," I said quietly. "You should not be here at night." She opened her mouth to protest, but something in my tone stopped her. She left without another word, her heels clicking sharply down the hallway. Each step sounded like a nail in the coffin she was building for me. When the door closed, I locked it and sank into Charles's old chair. I held the envelope close to my chest and whispered to the shadows, "You almost fooled me, my darling girl." Almost. The next morning, Gregory came alone. He carried flowers again, but this time they were lilies, the kind they place at funerals. "How thoughtful," I said, my voice neutral. He smiled, but his eyes flicked toward the table where I'd laid my medication bottles. "I was just checking in. You know how worried Lily gets. You've been forgetting your pills lately." I tilted my head. "You seem very interested in my health, Gregory." He chuckled softly. "Only because we care." Then, as he rearranged the flowers, I saw him do it. One quick, practiced move. His hand brushed over the pill organizer. I heard a faint click. He didn't know I had switched the bottles the night before. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression calm. "Stay for tea." He declined, of course. He always did it after doing something wrong. The guilty rarely linger in the house of their victim. When he left, I opened the pill case. The capsules had been tampered with, faint punctures near the top. A chill slid down my spine. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about timing. That evening, I called my lawyer again. "Mr. Jenkins," I said, "make sure the new one will stay in your private vault. Do not send any copies here. And if anyone asks about it, you never heard from me." He hesitated. "Eleanor, you're scaring me." "Good," I replied. "That means we're doing it right." The days that followed were a performance. I pretended to be weak. I let my hair go uncombed. I shuffled through the halls, sighing as though the weight of years had finally defeated me. Lily came more often. Gregory started speaking softly, as if addressing someone near the end. "Maybe we should call the doctor," he said one evening, looking me over with false concern. "Yes," Lily agreed. "You're pale, Mother. Maybe you should stay with us for a while." We could take care of you. Take care. Always the same words, like a haunting refrain. I met her gaze, smiled sweetly, and said, I think that would be lovely. The surprise on her face was almost worth the years of love I'd wasted on her. Their house felt colder than mine. Modern furniture, polished floors, walls without photographs. The kind of house that looked like it belonged to strangers. The first night I slept there, I locked my bedroom door. But even then, I could hear their whispers through the thin walls. She's getting worse, Gregory murmured. Lily sighed. Just a few more days. The lawyer's supposed to come by next week. He chuckled. Then we can finally breathe. Breathe. As if my death was oxygen. I stared at the ceiling, my fingers gripping the locket Charles gave me 50 years ago. Inside was a tiny key, the key to everything. The key to my last act. The next morning, I pretended to faint in the kitchen. Gregory rushed in dramatically, calling for Lily. They helped me to the couch, whispering like vultures circling prey. Lily brought me water. You need rest, Mother. Don't worry, we'll handle everything. As she stroked my hand, I noticed the faintest trace of a smile tugging at her lips. My sweet Lily, the daughter who once cried when her goldfish died, was now waiting for my last breath. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to them, but to the world that would follow. I wrote down everything, the whispers, the tampered pills, the broken lock, the powder on her hands. I sealed it with the tiny key from my locket. Then, I made a call, one I hadn't planned to make yet. Detective Harris, I said softly, it's time. The next day, Gregory brought me breakfast. He smiled too easily. Porridge with honey, just how you like it. I smiled back. How kind of you. He placed the bowl on the table and watched me lift the spoon. I watched every movement. Waiting. I dipped the spoon, then paused midair. You know, Gregory, I said quietly, when I go, I'll make sure Lily is well taken care of. He blinked, caught off guard. That's all I ever wanted. I know, I said. That's why I changed everything. His face froze. What? I let the spoon fall back into the bowl. The splash was the only sound in the room. I changed the will, I whispered. The color drained from his face. That night their bedroom door slammed. I could hear them arguing, her voice sharp, his full of panic. And I knew one of them would not wait for me to die anymore. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the venom leaking through the walls. She changed it, Lily. Gregory hissed. Do you understand what that means? Everything's gone. Her voice trembled. How could she? When? We never saw her leave the house. Then she must have done it already. The old witch outsmarted us. A pause. Then Lily whispered, what if we hurry it up? Before she changes anything else. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears. Every word was a nail in the coffin of the girl I once raised. The next morning, the house smelled of burnt toast and tension. I moved slower than usual, dragging my slippers against the floorboards, pretending to be unaware. Lily's smile was brittle. Did you sleep well, Mother? Like a baby, I lied, watching her every movement. Gregory was pacing near the window, his jaw tight. We need to talk about your lawyer visit, he said, his tone falsely casual. I stirred my tea slowly. What about it? He leaned forward. You mentioned changing something in the will. I just want to be sure everything is fair for Lily. Fair? What a poisonous word in greedy mouths. I smiled faintly. Oh, it's fair. More than you think. He didn't like that answer. I saw it in the twitch of his jaw. He wanted control, and I had just taken it from him. That afternoon, while they were out, I began my quiet counterattack. I opened my old notebook, the one Charles and I used to record our vineyard accounts. Between the pages, I had hidden a small USB drive. On it were security camera clips from my house, footage of Gregory entering my study, touching the safe, and replacing my medication bottles. I had installed the cameras months ago, not out of paranoia but instinct. Charles always said, trust is precious. But proof is protection. I packed the drive, my original will, and my written letter into a small bag, and called my lawyer again. Mr. Jenkins, I said, I want you to prepare 2 envelopes. One labeled for the family, the other labeled for the police. Deliver them only if I fail to call you by Friday. His silence stretched for a beat. Eleanor, are you in danger? I looked out the window at the clouds gathering above the town. Not yet. But the storm's close. That evening, Lily returned home early. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes swollen from crying. Mother, she said softly, Gregory's been upset. He didn't mean to sound harsh earlier. I smiled. Oh, I know. He's just worried about the future. She nodded slowly. We all are. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. He said you might be losing your mind. He wants to have you evaluated. I felt the blood leave my face. Evaluated? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just a small psychological test, to make sure you can still make legal decisions. So that was their next move, to paint me insane. Clever. Ruthless. Predictable. I reached out, touching her hand gently. My sweet Lily, do you believe that too? Her lip quivered. I don't know anymore. Her words sliced deeper than any knife. For the first time, I saw it clearly. She was torn between guilt and greed, love and fear. Gregory was pulling her strings, and I was the puppet they were trying to cut loose. That night I feigned confusion. I forgot where my room was. I mistakenly left the stove on. I even spilled my tea. Each act carefully measured, each slip deliberate. If they wanted a senile old woman, I would give them one. Gregory called their family doctor, pretending to be concerned. She's deteriorating fast, he said. I think she needs to be evaluated for dementia. The doctor agreed to visit on Thursday. Perfect. That gave me 2 days. 2 days to turn their trap into mine. The next morning, I called Detective Harris again. They're accelerating, I told him. They plan to declare me mentally incompetent. Then we move sooner, he said. You just stick to the act. Let them think they're winning. I smiled. Oh, detective, they already think that. That evening, as Lily brought me my tea, I asked gently, would you do me a favor, dear? Bring my jewelry box from the study. I want to wear your father's locket tomorrow. She nodded and left. As soon as she did, I poured the tea down the drain. The liquid left a faint pink residue on the porcelain, almost invisible, but not to my eyes. When she returned, I smiled warmly. Thank you, my darling. That night, as I pretended to sleep, I heard the faint creak of my bedroom door. Soft footsteps approached. A whisper, Gregory's. Check her pulse. My body froze under the blanket, but I didn't move. I heard the rustle of fabric, the quiet brush of skin against skin. Then, the slow exhale of relief. She's still alive, Lily whispered. Not for long, he muttered. They left, closing the door gently behind them. What they didn't know was that I had already moved out everything of value. The deeds, the jewelry, the trust documents. And by dawn, the police would be watching the very house they thought would be their fortune. Morning light spilled across the room, soft and gold, the kind of light that usually brought comfort. But that day it felt like judgment, the calm before a storm. I rose early, my old bones aching but my mind sharper than ever. I brewed tea for myself, real tea this time, and watched the sun climb over the distant hills. Charles used to say mornings reveal the truth, and by tonight, everything would be revealed. The doctor was scheduled to arrive at noon. Gregory and Lily were already whispering in the kitchen, their voices hushed but urgent. She's barely lucid, Gregory muttered. One proper evaluation and the lawyer will have no choice but to freeze her assets. Lily's voice trembled. But what if she realizes what we're doing? She won't. She's gone. Haven't you noticed? Half the time she forgets what day it is. He didn't realize I'd been pretending to forget for his benefit. I shuffled into the kitchen, deliberately knocking my cane against the wall. Good morning, I said, my tone fragile, harmless. Gregory smiled, too wide. Morning, Mom. We were just talking about the doctor's visit. Oh yes, I said softly. The doctor. Lily avoided my gaze. It's just routine, Mother. Nothing to worry about. Of course, I said. I trust you both. The lie hung in the air like smoke. At noon, the doorbell rang. The doctor, a tall man with kind eyes, stepped inside, shaking hands all around. Gregory guided him to the living room, where I sat by the window knitting. Mrs. Briggs, the doctor began gently, I just need to ask you a few questions, if that's all right. Of course, dear, I said with a smile. As he questioned me, names, dates, memories, I deliberately stumbled. Just enough to seem frail, confused, forgetful. But not lost. Not yet. He glanced occasionally at Gregory and Lily, who hovered nearby, pretending concern. But his brow furrowed slightly, as though he sensed something beneath the surface. After the test, he smiled politely and said, I'll prepare my report. Gregory followed him to the door, lowering his voice. Please, doctor, be honest in your notes. We just want what's best for her. I caught the flicker of guilt on Lily's face as she looked away. When they returned, Gregory was practically glowing. Well, Mom, the doctor will get back to us soon. Maybe it's time you rested upstairs. His tone was honeyed, but his eyes were hard. I stood slowly, nodding. You're right, Gregory. I think I'll take a nap. He smiled, relieved, unaware that I had already called Detective Harris earlier that morning, confirming everything was in place. Upstairs, I opened my dresser drawer and removed a small recorder hidden beneath my scarves. It had captured everything, The night whispers, the argument, the threats. Every word. I placed it in my handbag next to the USB drive. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was no longer about money or revenge. It was about reclaiming truth. About showing my daughter what love twisted by greed could destroy. At 3 o'clock, Gregory knocked softly. "Mom, are you awake?" "Yes, dear," I said sweetly. He stepped inside. His shirt was crisp, his smile charming. "You must be tired. I'll bring you some tea before dinner." "Tea again?" "Always tea." "Thank you, Gregory. You've been so kind." He smiled and left. The moment the door closed, I picked up my phone and whispered, "Detective, it's happening now." Downstairs, the kettle whistled. Footsteps. 2 voices. A faint clink of metal. I waited, heartbeat steady, breath controlled. When Gregory returned with the tray, I saw the faint shimmer on the rim of my cup, the same pink residue I'd seen before. He set it down carefully, his smile thin. "Drink while it's hot, Mom." I looked at him with calm eyes. "Why don't you join me?" He froze. "I just had some." I smiled faintly. "Then one more won't hurt." Before he could answer, a loud knock thundered through the house. Gregory stiffened. "Who the hell?" The door swung open and Detective Harris's voice filled the room. "Police. We need to speak with Mrs. Eleanor Briggs." Gregory's face went white, Lily gasped, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the sweet, sharp scent of justice in the air. The living room felt smaller when the officers entered. Too small to contain all the secrets pressing against the walls. Gregory's face lost every trace of confidence, while Lily stood frozen near the staircase, her fingers clutching the railing like it might save her from drowning. Detective Harris stepped forward, his presence calm but unyielding. "Mrs. Briggs," he said, his voice clear, "we received your call. Are you ready to proceed?" "Yes," I said simply. "It is time." Gregory laughed, loud, forced, desperate. "Proceed? What is this, some kind of game?" "She's not well, Detective. You should know she's been tampered with medication, broken locks, and recorded confessions." I interrupted, my tone sharp as glass. "I may be old, Gregory, but I am not senile." The room went still. Lily's voice quivered. "Mother, please, what are you talking about?" I turned to her. "You tell me, my dear. Did you not hear your husband whisper about what would happen once I was gone?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Detective Harris gestured to one of the officers, who set a small device on the coffee table. "This was found in Mrs. Briggs's handbag," he said. "Let's hear it." A click. Then the room filled with the faint crackle of recorded sound, whispers in the dark. "She changed it, Lily. Do you understand what that means? Everything's gone." Then we hurry it up. Check her pulse. She's still alive. Not for long. The recording ended in silence so thick it pressed against my chest. Gregory took a step back, his composure fracturing. That's taken out of context." Detective Harris's gaze didn't waver. "We'll determine the context soon enough." "Mrs. Briggs, you mentioned there was video evidence as well." "Yes," I said, opening my bag. I handed over the USB drive. "It's all there. Him in my study, opening my safe, replacing my medicine. I saved everything." One of the officers nodded, connecting it to a laptop. The video flickered to life. Gregory appeared on screen, glancing around before kneeling by my safe. His hands moved quickly, searching, pocketing something, and then placing the items back differently. The color drained from his face. "This is illegal. You can't record me in your own house without telling me." I leaned forward, my eyes steady. "I think you will find the law disagrees, considering you were attempting to poison me." A murmur rippled through the room. One of the officers whispered to the detective, who nodded grimly. "Mr. Saunders," Detective Harris said firmly, "you're under investigation for attempted fraud and potential homicide. I suggest you remain silent." Lily gasped. "Homicide? No, he couldn't." Gregory turned to her sharply. "You knew about this. You helped me." Her eyes widened in horror. "No, I only wanted to make sure Mother was safe." I said what you wanted to hear," he snapped, voice rising. "You're the one who told me where she kept the will." The argument ignited like a wildfire, accusations, tears, denial. I sat back, watching the chaos unfold, the pain and disbelief tangled between them like a noose. It should have hurt, watching my daughter unravel, realizing she'd let greed blind her. But all I felt was a weary sadness, the kind that settles deep and heavy, like rain over forgotten graves. Detective Harris raised his hand. "Enough. Mrs. Briggs, did you also update your will recently?" I nodded. "I did. And it's in Mr. Jenkins's vault. Not a penny of my estate will go to either of them." Gregory's rage exploded. You can't do that. We've been taking care of you. Taking care, I repeated softly. You tried to end me. He lunged forward, but two officers restrained him before he could take another step. His voice cracked as they forced him toward the door. You old witch. You ruined everything. I looked at him calmly. No, Gregory. You ruined yourself. The officers led him out, his protests fading into the distance until the only sound left was Lily's sobbing. She sank to her knees beside me. Mother. I didn't know he'd go that far. I thought he just wanted to secure the future. Her words trembled like leaves in the wind. Your future, I said quietly, was never meant to be built on my grave. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Please forgive me. I studied her face, the face that once pressed against my shoulder as a child, the one I'd kissed goodnight for 20 years. The same face that had smiled while watching me drink from poisoned cups. I forgive you, I said softly. But forgiveness is not the same as trust. Her head bowed. Detective Harris stood nearby, speaking with one of the officers, then turned back to me. Mrs. Briggs, we'll escort you home and secure your property. We'll also need you to make a formal statement tomorrow morning. Of course, I said. As they led me outside, the cool air hit my face like a baptism. The world felt cleaner, sharper, free of the poison that had lived under my roof. Neighbors had gathered on the street, whispering, their eyes wide as Gregory was placed in the back of a police car. Someone called out, Mrs. Briggs, are you all right? I smiled faintly. I am now. The flash of camera phones, the murmur of gossip, all of it blurred around me. Because for the first time in months, I felt peace blooming quietly in my chest. But deep inside, beneath the calm, another feeling stirred, unfinished. Because though Gregory was gone, Lily's silence still haunted me. She had chosen him, and I wasn't done teaching her what that choice cost. The next morning, before the police arrived for my statement, I received a letter slipped under my door. The handwriting was trembling but familiar. It read, Mother, I think I'm pregnant. The letter trembled in my hands. Mother, I think I'm pregnant. For a long moment, I just stared at the words. The ink was smudged at the edges, as if tears had fallen on the paper. I read it again, slower this time, each word sinking deep into me like a stone into still water. Pregnant. My daughter. Carrying the child of the man who tried to kill me. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the table for balance. My first instinct was disbelief, then pity, and then unexpectedly anger. Not at the baby, but at the chain of weakness and greed that had poisoned our bloodline. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my locket. This child would not suffer for the sins of its parents. But Lily, she had to face what she had done. When the police came later that morning, I gave my statement calmly. Detective Harris listened, taking notes, occasionally glancing up with that look of quiet admiration he tried to hide. You handled this brilliantly, Mrs. Briggs, he said. Few people could have kept their composure. I smiled faintly. Composure is the last weapon of the underestimated. He chuckled softly. Gregory's facing multiple charges, attempted homicide, fraud, tampering with medication. We'll know more once the lab results confirm the poison. I nodded. And Lily? She's not charged yet. But if we find evidence she participated, that could change. I looked toward the window. The sunlight felt cold on my face. Leave her to me for now, detective. Some punishments are not meant for courts. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. I understand. 2 days later, Lily came to my house. Her eyes were swollen, her clothes wrinkled, her hair undone, a shadow of the woman she used to be. She stood in the doorway, trembling. Mother, may I come in? I hesitated before stepping aside. You may. She entered quietly, her hands clutching her belly as if already protecting the life inside. I went to the doctor, she whispered. It's true. I'm 8 weeks along. I sat down, my voice steady. Then you have a choice to make, not just for you but for your child. She nodded, tears spilling freely. I made so many mistakes, Mother. I thought Gregory loved me. He said he wanted to build a future for us. I believed him. Her voice cracked. I didn't know he'd try to hurt you. Didn't you? I asked softly. She looked up, shocked. You think I wanted this? I think you closed your eyes because it was easier than facing what he was. I think you wanted comfort, even if it meant sacrificing truth. And truth, my dear, is the first thing greed devours. Her shoulders slumped. I don't expect forgiveness. I sighed. Forgiveness is already given. But redemption, that you must earn. That night, after she fell asleep in the guest room, I went to my study and took out the new will from the safe. It was sealed, final, and legally protected. I had left most of my estate to charity, to a children's hospital, a scholarship fund, and the vineyard workers who'd been loyal for decades. But there was one small clause I hadn't told anyone about. A trust. For Lily's child. The conditions were strict. The funds would be held until the child turned 21, accessible only if Lily lived an honest, crime-free life. If she failed, the money would revert to the hospital. I smiled faintly, sealing the envelope again. Charles, I whispered, our legacy will skip a generation, but at least it will survive. The next morning, Lily woke early. She found me in the garden pruning roses. Mother, she said softly, I don't know what to do now. I have no home, no money, no one. I looked up, meeting her tearful eyes. Then start by being someone your child can respect. That's more valuable than any inheritance. She nodded, her lips trembling. I want to make things right. Good, I said, handing her the shears. Start with the weeds. She hesitated, then knelt beside me. For the next hour, we worked in silence, the sun warming our backs, the scent of roses filling the air. For the first time in years, there was no deception between us, only the fragile possibility of healing. When she left that afternoon, I stood at the gate watching her go. Her posture was uncertain, but there was something different, the faintest glimmer of humility. Maybe that was enough. 3 weeks later, Detective Harris visited again. Gregory pleaded guilty, he said. He'll be in prison for a long time. I nodded slowly. Good. Let him have time to remember the taste of his own ambition. He smiled. And your daughter? She's trying, I said. That's all I can ask. He paused at the door. You really are remarkable, Mrs. Briggs. Most people would have wanted blood. I looked at him, a quiet smile playing on my lips. Justice doesn't need blood, detective. It only needs truth and patience. That evening, I poured myself a cup of tea, the same brand Gregory used to bring me, but now it tasted different. Purer somehow. As the sky turned crimson outside, I whispered to the empty room. You thought I was weak. But wisdom is never weakness. It's the art of waiting for the right moment to strike. I raised my cup, toasting the silence. To endings, I said softly, and to the lessons that follow them. A week later, I received a letter from Lily. Inside was a sonogram. Beneath it, in her trembling handwriting, she had written, Mother, I'll name her Eleanor. After the bravest woman I know. I sat in my garden that morning, the letter in one hand, the sonogram in the other. The tiny shape on the paper, fragile, undefined, yet full of life, shimmered in the sunlight. My granddaughter, little Eleanor. For the first time in years, my heart softened completely. Not with naivety, but with peace. The kind that comes only after storms have stripped everything false away. I looked around at my roses, the same ones I had planted when Lily was a child. Back then, she'd run through the garden, laughing, tripping over her little boots while I warned her to be gentle with the petals. And now the cycle has turned again. It was strange how life had a way of mending itself. Not perfectly, not without scars, but enough to keep going. The weeks that followed were quiet. Gregory's trial dominated the local papers. Real estate agent convicted in attempted poison plot against mother-in-law. The headlines felt like fiction. I never liked seeing my name printed in bold letters, but I let them write what they wanted. The truth was simpler. Greed never prospers and masks always fall. Lily began visiting every Sunday. She came alone, her belly slowly growing, her steps gentler. Sometimes she brought small gifts, a loaf of bread, a bouquet from the market, or a jar of homemade jam. Each time she asked, Do you want me to leave it in the kitchen, Mother? And each time I answered, No, dear. Sit with me a while. At first, our conversations were hesitant, careful, full of unspoken apologies. But slowly, like spring thawing winter, warmth began to return. One afternoon, as we watched the sun dip low over the vineyard, she asked, How did you stay so calm through it all? When did you know what we were doing? I smiled, the kind of smile only age can hold. Because panic is a gift you give to your enemies. I learned that long ago. I wanted you to think I was powerless. People reveal their truth when they believe no one's watching. She looked down. I don't deserve your kindness. You don't, I said plainly, then softer. But you do deserve a chance to earn it. Tears filled her eyes. I will, Mother. For her. For Eleanor. When baby Eleanor was born, I didn't expect to feel the rush of love I did. But the first time Lily placed her in my arms, the world fell away. She was so small, so pure, untouched by the lies that nearly destroyed us. I traced her tiny fingers with trembling hands and whispered, You will know the truth, little one. You will grow strong, not spoiled. Wise, not cruel. Lily smiled faintly. She'll have your spirit. Let's hope she has your heart, I said. Once you had the best one I'd ever known. For the first time in a long while we both smiled without pain. Months passed. My health began to wane, but not in the way they once wished for. This time it was natural, slow, gentle, like the setting of a sun that had shone long enough. I made peace with my memories. With Charles, whose picture still sat on the mantel. With Lily, who now cared for me not out of duty, but genuine love. And with myself, the woman who had survived betrayal not with fury, but with wisdom. Sometimes I would sit with baby Eleanor on my lap, telling her stories she could not yet understand. Stories of choices, of deceit, of justice and forgiveness. Her tiny hands would grasp my fingers as if she already knew what kind of world she was inheriting. One evening, Lily and I sat by the fire. She looked over at me and said softly, "I used to think strength meant control. Now I know it means knowing when to let go." I nodded. "Yes, child. Strength is not in holding power. It's in holding peace, even when others try to take it from you." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Thank you, Mother." I smiled, closing my eyes. "You are welcome. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Raise her to be kind, but never blind." "I promise." As the fire crackled low, I watched the shadows dance on the walls, the same walls that had once echoed with deceit. Now they were filled with laughter again, soft and real. And I realized something simple but profound. Justice had been done. Not because I won, but because I refused to become like them. People often think revenge means destruction. But true revenge is rebuilding your life so beautifully that those who tried to ruin it must live with the memory of their failure. I smiled at the sleeping child in Lily's arms, her tiny chest rising and falling like a promise. "They thought I was weak," I whispered, my voice steady and full of quiet pride, "but wisdom never fades. Greed rots the soul long before it touches gold. Betrayal may wound, but truth heals deeper than revenge ever could." If you love Justice stories, like and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. They thought I was weak, but wisdom never fades. What lesson do you take from this story? Como bilo?